Did you know that 33 million teen vapers globally think that because e-cigarettes don't cause cancer, like conventional cigarettes, they must be all good? By conveying the hazards of nicotine vaping as 5-minute short stories or microlearning, and spoken in the simplest language possible, Safeguard is by youth, for youth, and in the language of youth. Teen Vaping Awareness Mission. So, what are you waiting for? Listen, learn, quit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Teen Vaping Awareness Microlearning Platform, Safeguard, where I seek to take the complex science of adolescent vaping and simplify it down for a teen-appropriate level. So now we're in Story 7 of this 9-video microlearning series, and we've come a long way since the genesis of Safeguard in Story 1. Back in Story 1, we focused on the history of smoking and the invention of the e-cigarette. Story 2 then delved into the differences between smoking and vaping. Story 3 delivered that organ-by-organ analysis of why vaping is problematic. Story 4 delved into the corporate tactics that lure minors to vapes. Story 5 was the epidemiology of vaping, the prevalence and trend analysis. And Story 6 focused on the social triggers, also known as social determinants, that drive teens to vaping. Today in Story 7, we focus on the A of Safeguard, the anti-vape regulations and their successes and loopholes. We'll discuss the robust set of anti-e-cigarette regulations the US government has enacted, and then go into the success of some of them in curbing the vaping epidemic and the loopholes of some that vape makers are exploiting. So, as we've discussed in the past, in between 2011 and 2023, there was a two-brand duopoly, in the sense that it was two companies that were taking control of the market in the vaping space. One of them was Juul, which was the most popular pod-based product, and the other one was Voos, which was a rechargeable vape made by the company R.J. Reynolds. And their winning formula that led them to be so successful was, in order to hook teenagers, they combined flavored e-cigarettes and fruity flavors with teen-centric marketing. So to first discuss the power of flavoring, according to this CDC study shown here, 9 out of 10 youth initiate their vaping with a flavored product, and 66% of them don't even know that it contains tobacco. And this is a particularly jarring statistic, demonstrating that 2/3 of the youth who initiate their vaping with a flavored product don't even know that this product contains tobacco in the first place and think it's just fruity flavors, demonstrating Juul and Voos's success at deceiving these adolescents. And 72% of teens who are daily users preferred flavored vapes. In addition, the other factor that's led to this winning formula for Juul and Voos was the power of branding and marketing. So in 2018, an earnings report by Juul Labs reported $73 million spent on marketing of vape products to teens. And this had an immediate effect in 2019, as data from the National Youth Tobacco Survey, which we've discussed previously, demonstrated that 69.3% of American youth reported exposure to e-cigarette marketing directed specifically at adolescents. And you can also see in this graph to the bottom right of your screen how much this increase in marketing budget increased the prevalence of e-cigarette usage as well, demonstrating the immediate impact of the action that Juul Labs took in 2018. And this obviously led many people to vape and led to a huge vaping epidemic since 2011. And here are some of the justifications for why adolescents vape in the first place, whether that be the flavors that we just talked about, the cool factor, the fact that it's relaxing or an attention booster, many reasons, or many justifications rather, that adolescents use for their vaping habits. But just as the vape companies got smarter, so did the government. So now the meat of Story 7 is going to be about the impact of these governmental policies on teen vaping, particularly post-pandemic. So the first major national policy surrounding vaping was the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act of June 2009. And this new regulation restricted the promotion of tobacco products by preventing tobacco brands from sponsoring social events, and it also allowed the executive branch to take police violators. Moving on to May 2016, the deeming rule extended the definition of tobacco products from the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act to include e-cigarettes, which was a major piece of legislation that went into action in 2016, as many of the previous legislation surrounding conventional smoking now could apply to vaping as well. In December 2019, Tobacco 21 came into place, raising the minimum age for purchasing tobacco and nicotine products from 18 up to 21, preventing youth or young adults in that 18 to 20 category from vaping to some extent. Then in July 2020, the Online Sales of E-Cigarettes to Children Act, the Preventing Online Sales of E-Cigarettes to Children, implemented a higher rate of sales tax on e-cigarette revenues, required the U.S. Postal Service to prevent the mailing of nicotine vape products, and mandated the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, to conduct a long-term study on the health impacts of nicotine vaping. And lastly, the Pre-Market Tobacco Product Application, or PMTA guidelines, required vape makers and companies to submit clinical studies to the FDA showing that A, their companies or their products are not more injurious to public health than conventional cigarettes, and also to prove as corporations that they're marketing their e-cigarettes in an accurate and truthful manner, which, as we discussed, often did not happen prior to this. So now I wanted to focus on two success stories of U.S. legislation effectively curbing the teen vaping epidemic. The first of these is how the FDA was able to use the framework presented in the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act of 2009, along with the Deeming Rule of 2016, to be able to launch an investigation on Juul in 2019 about false marketing to students. And this led to rapid action by the FDA, in that the first leg of removal of some of Juul's fruity flavored vape products from the market occurred just that very same year in 2019, demonstrating how immediate this action was. And then in 2021, the amendment of the PMTA guidelines that we just discussed led the makers of both Juul and Vuse to submit PMTAs for their products. And this led to them receiving marketing denial orders, or MDOs, in 2022. 3 years of litigation anti-FDA by both Juul and RJ Reynolds, which makes Vuse, and publishing new clinical data to the FDA then occurred. And then in 2024, Juul and Vuse were hence reinstated in the US, but the scope of their product offerings were significantly curtailed, leading to no more sort of fruity candy flavors from these two companies. And 3 to 4 years of Juul and Vuse being off the market, though, led to them going from market leaders to market laggers, and taking their place, as we touched on in story 4 as well, were these two companies, Elf Bar and Breeze, now creating their own duopoly, controlling 56% of the adolescent vape market. This is predominantly because the makers of Elf Bar and Breeze, or those companies, are not US domiciled and are hence not obligated to comply with US FDA law. Hence, despite the FDA banning multi-use vape pens, Elf Bar and Breeze are still able to succeed in selling these very same items. And beyond that, their makers are reported to pay influencers to put content for Elf Bar and Breeze up directly on social media, but keeping the company incognito, allowing it to further flout the US's more strict regulations. But we hope here that eventually US laws will catch up to Elf Bar and Breeze, curbing vaping and curbing the vaping epidemic more significantly in the future. So now for our usual learning objectives quiz of 5 questions to conclude the video. First and foremost, what's the most important reason that teens have liked using e-cigarettes? Which 2 brands have historically led the teen vape market? Why did Juul and Vuse have big marketing budgets? Which of these is not a reason that teens give to justify vaping? Why is Elf Bar able to sell product and thrive in the US despite FDA regulations that stopped Juul and Vuse? So we'll give you guys a little bit of time as usual to pause the video and think through and respond to these questions, and then we'll go back and check the answer key. Okay, I hope you guys have all had the opportunity to pause the video and attempt these 5 multiple choice questions. Now let's take a look at the answers. So here are your answers for these 5 questions. You can take a second to check your work on these 5 questions, and as usual, if you got 3 out of 5 correct, thank you so much for tuning in with me today, and now we'll move into the second to last video of our micro-learning series, Story 8.